I'll take Bavarian.
Bavarian's old-style beer.
Mellow Bavarian beer.
I'll take Bavarian,
But it's a
too.
man's beer.
Yes, dear, but I like it too.
You do? We like Bavarian.
You like Bavarian, too.
It's Bavarian beer for you.
You gave him all our beer, he's loaded.
No way.
He's supposed to roar.
Maybe I ought to crank his tail, eh? That'll start him up. Okay, start up. Come on, eh?
This is Infants on Thrones. The philosophies of men mingled with humor. We are the core.
Welcome back to an extra special edition of Infants on Thrones. Today we have for you another listener essay. This was submitted by Chad, and it's all about beer. It was actually the first essay submitted. It's just taken us a while to get to it. It's called Confessions of a Mormon Beer Snob. And Matt and Jesse lead the panel discussion. So first, let's listen to the essay, and let's all just feel the love.
Deschutes Mirror Pond Pale Ale. I love beer. Beer's a science. Beer's an art. Hell, I even grow my own hops. Some might say I've taken my interest, my hobby to the extreme, and maybe I have, but no more extreme than I ever took Mormonism. Plus, my beer hobby's a lot cheaper. Not near as time-consuming either. Doesn't take me away from my family like the church used to. It certainly is much better for my health. Yeah, I'll say it. My beer habit is healthier than Mormonism. Religion was killing me. I don't get why Mormons despise beer so much. After all, it is allowed in the Word of Wisdom, at least if you actually believe in the revelation that Joseph Smith recorded in the Doctrine and Covenants. Why so scared, Mormons? Joseph Smith certainly appreciated the virtues of alcohol. If I'd lived in Nauvoo in 1844, I'm sure I'd been with Joseph down at Moser's, hanging out with the buddies, just like the guys do today, down a few pints and shoot the shit. There's a documentary, you can find it on Netflix, that describes how beer saved the world. In fact, that was the title, How Beer Saved the World. I'm pretty sure that beer not only saved the world, but it saved me as well. Saved my sanity, probably even saved my marriage. I wasn't always so open about my affinity to beer. There was a time when I was an active in the Mormon church, devout, even held a temple recommend, just so I could hold certain callings. Sure, I'd sneak a drink here and there. Branch president didn't care. He's just grateful for the help, anyone willing to accept a calling. He was a good man like that, Christ-like, non-judgmental, just doing the church job he got stuck with for the last 20 years. He just wanted some help to keep the branch functioning, and it didn't matter to him if I fudged or used some mental gymnastics to justify my answer to the Word of Wisdom temple recommend question. I could answer the last question, the only one that should be asked in the entire interview, with an affirmative yes. I think that was good enough for him. Generally speaking, the Mormon people are true. They're good folks. I sometimes lament that the church is not as true as the people who belong to it. My branch president didn't care that I had a beard, wore a blue shirt, scoffed at the notion of a literal global flood. Yeah, I even admitted during Sunday school that Jonah might not have been a real person. Maybe he was just a myth. But if he was real, he sure as hell didn't get swallowed by a fish. You know, stomach acid. It's just as likely that he got sucked into an ancient alien submarine. And I said so. But no one cared. Not out here in our branch. A blue-shirted, bearded, beer-drinking elders' quorum president was actually appreciated by the locals. Now, my family from the Moore Corps, not so much. That was a whole other story. I have 8 siblings, all of them true blue believing Mormons. Bishops, high councilmen, auxiliary presidents, as well as a stake president brother. It didn't matter that I lived 700 miles away in a small liberal branch in an even more liberal state of Oregon. In their eyes, I was an apostate. I was a wolf in sheep clothing, especially when they found out I'd spent the last several years serving as an elders quorum president, which is actually a stake calling. They colluded together as a family and decided the only course of action was to make my spiritual journey and well-being their business. Calls were made, accusations were made, but they weren't made to me. They foolishly went straight to my stake president. What the hell were they thinking? Chad, we're concerned you have Buddhism listed as your religion on Facebook. Really? That's what you're concerned about? You're concerned about my Facebook religious status? Yeah, I did have Buddhism listed. But if they had checked a month earlier, they'd have noticed my religious status was zombieism. The month before that was Raelianism. The month before that, I was a vamp. It's called a sense of humor. Apparently, my worst offense was my association with John Deline's Stay LDS website. That was the kicker. That's what they used to accuse me of apostasy when they threatened me with church discipline. Apostasy. I'm not talking about RFM or the Four-Year or Mormon Discussions or even the Snob New Order Mormon website. They were upset about Stay LDS. Hey guys, it's called Stay LDS for a reason. Now I'm banned from leadership callings. I have a red flag in my file at Salt Lake City. Completely marginalized from the branch and humiliated at church. And if they had their way, I'd probably be humiliated and marginalized in my own home. I'm sure this was all done for my benefit, and everyone expected me to quickly fall back in line, especially when my TBM spouse confronted me about putting our eternal family in jeopardy. Humiliation and shame are powerful Mormon weapons. I don't like threats. Neither did Janet, my wife, nor did she like being manipulated and used. We walked away from it all, and our 3 teens walked with us. We decided early on that we would attend church as a family or we would stay home as a family. All in all, with our multiple callings on Mother's Day of 2011, our small branch lost their elders quorum president, their Sunday school president, their primary president, their Sunday school instructor, primary teacher, chorister, assistant scoutmaster. Plus, they lost 2 Aaronic priesthood holders. We only had 3 to begin with. What a shame. And so unnecessary. Church, here's my advice. You can take it or leave it. But if you don't want to be accused of being a cult, please don't act like one. Pretty well, my goal as far as the church is concerned these days is to develop pure, total, utter apathy. I have a ways to go yet. I have 2 die-hard, set-in-stone rules as far as the church is concerned. Only 2. 1, I will not resign. I think that's given the church the easy way out. 2, I will not acknowledge or attend any kind of church disciplinary council. If the church doesn't want me, they can kick me out. Fine by me. Just don't expect me to be at the meeting when it happens. So why am I so obsessed with beer and home brewing? And why am I so open about my Mormon transgression of beer drinking? Well, why not? It's a great hobby. It's not like I had to walk away from the church so I could sin, that is, drink beer, which is the common assumption I assume that the average member has. Nope, I didn't have to leave the church to do that. I drank beer for much of my life as an active Mormon. The church likes to emphasize that they are not a hotel for perfect people, and they are a hospital for sinners. My branch president understood this more than most. Yeah, I drank beer, discreetly, but I also fulfilled all my callings. I worked hard to keep our little branch operational. Everything I was asked to do, I did. But now, why hide it? What do I have to lose? Now the doors to most of my associations within the church were closed off to me. I had to seek new friendships, and I found them with my fellow teachers. Besides, I needed a hobby, something to take my mind off the church, something to take up the extra time I had on Sundays and the hundreds of hours I had previously donated to the church. Beer was the obvious solution. Well, it was either start a home brewery or get a Harley, and home brewing was cheaper and a hell of a lot safer. At least that's how I sold it to Janet. My neighbor, Fletch, yeah, that's his real name, helped me convert the washroom in the back of the house into a brewery. Fletch works at the same school I do. We named the brewery the HQT Club. That's educator lingo for highly qualified teachers. I worked hard to keep the kegs full, ready for the end of the week, HQT night. Teachers gather at my place to indulge in my latest creations. I've brewed 215 gallons of beer in the last year, 1,720 pints, or 2,294 bottles of beer. I've used 16 different hop varieties and 8 different strains of yeast. And I make a mean IPA. I discovered from trial and error that rye and bitter orange peel will make a good beer damn good. I call my house special the Short Angry Man Orange Rye IPA. I had a 3-day HQT beer fest planned the weekend my daughter graduated from high school. 2 kegs of my finest IPA. Then my wife surprised me with the information that my in-laws from Utah were coming out. My father-in-law has been a Mormon bishop for at least half his life, 30-plus years. I worried about it. Janet worried about it. Finally, we just decided to be upfront and let Mom and Dad and everyone know what to expect. Janet informed her parents that I was a beer drinker. A serious beer drinker. I don't think Dad was surprised. He told Janet to not worry about it, make sure we knew they loved us anyway. Generally speaking, the Mormon people are true. I drank beer that weekend, a lot of beer. I spent 3 nights of HQT out on the patio. The in-laws joined us. They didn't drink, but they pulled out their banjos and guitars. The singing and bluegrass music was awesome. The beer was awesome. The company was awesome. Faithful Mormons, apostate Mormons, non-Mormons, all having a good time together. And really, why shouldn't we? Beer isn't evil. The word of wisdom is just a Mormon cultural marker to identify and separate Temple Recommend holding Mormons from the non-Temple Recommend holding Mormons and the Gentiles. It doesn't have to be that way. My friend Nathan still lives in Cache Valley where we grew up. He appreciates a good beer and will drive out to Oregon just to drink one, and he's done so on many occasions. Nathan has been disfellowshipped from the church. Coincidence? Nah. About the same time I was getting pushed out of my branch out here in Oregon, he was in a church disciplinary council with a stake president who just so happens to be my brother. Still, to this day, Nathan defends the Mormons. He talks fondly of the church, always willing to give the members the benefit of the doubt, even my family. He has been much more forgiving than I have. I'll often drink a beer out of my patio at night. I'll get a fire burning, listen to the trees and the leaves, the wind, and watch a sunset. I'll talk to the gods, and sometimes they'll even talk back. When that happens, I'll give Nathan a call. We'll drink, he in Utah, me out here in Oregon, and we'll visit and we'll solve the world's problems. We'll make fun of the Tea Party, argue the merits of the Union, tell the same old high school stories we've told and heard 1,000 times. Maybe we'll discuss the idea of making a beer podcast or a beer cast. But inevitably, we'll end up talking about religion, Mormonism, and our personal journey within it and beyond it. My hope is to transcend religion entirely. But it won't happen today. Religion is in my DNA. Mormonism is in my blood. And there's a beer in my hand. To all you LDS beer snobs who appreciate a good beer, cheers from Oregon.
Well, let's just jump into it. So we got about a 12-minute essay, and you hit so many high points that I wanted to talk about that are things that we see through everybody's stories. The first one that stuck out to me was that beer is better for your health than Mormonism.
Yeah, I figured that would stick out. So
I agree with you, by the way, but I want to know why you think so.
Well, I feel better today. I feel happier, more at peace. That's for damn sure. And And in the essay, it pretty well spells it out. I have more time. I spend more time with family. I spend more time with my, personal hobbies and what I want to do. And I don't have the guilt like I did when I was going to church either.
What guilt did you had when you were at church?
Oh shit, everything. Not doing home teaching, missing church, all that, right? I mean, that's what. Well, and I think I even say that in the essay too. Is that I think that is the church uses guilt and fear. That's their two powerful weapons that they're going to use.
Yeah, so for me, it was always the not having family home evening, not reading the scriptures enough, and not praying. We had a daily fail at our house over and over again, and then just pick up the next day, and we're going to do better tomorrow, and then it wouldn't happen. So it's just a constant state of failure.
Hey, and I'll tell you what, the family home evening thing, I do family home evening more than I ever did when I was an active Mormon.
How's that?
Well, because we do it. I have to spend more time with family because, I think Mormons, they use the church as a crutch, and when you don't have the church, well, you don't have the crutch anymore. You got to do it yourself.
My experience was there was a bit of a rumspringa with alcohol when I left the church, but you didn't have that same experience. That is that the church. Leaving the church is what when you had your first drink.
No, but Chad, I was wondering the same thing because you said that you drank beer for much of your life before you lost belief in the church or before you had your faith crisis, however you want to term it. But I was kind of wondering what the backstory is on that because I would say that's, although I've certainly know people who that's the case for, that's probably not typical. So what was your experience with that? And how did you square that as a believer?
Yeah, well, I went on a mission and then came back and I went through college and I never drank a drop of beer for 7 years. Moved to Oregon and I started drinking beer immediately when I got to Oregon because it was, it's night and day between Utah and Oregon when it comes to beer.
So high school before the mission.
Yeah, I drank beer in high school.
Oh, okay, you did. So you'd already had some kind of introduction to it, or in high school you were familiar with it.
Yeah, sure.
Now you grew up in Utah then, is that right?
I grew up in Weston, Idaho, which is just north of Logan, Utah.
Okay.
Just right on the border.
So very, very Mormon.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, it's Cache Valley. Cache Valley's kind of I think that's the hotbed of fundamental Mormons.
Oh yeah. Providence, Cache Cheese.
Yeah. Yep.
So was you're still active and in Oregon and you start drinking again, what did you have any angst over that or any difficulty in doing that, or how did you reconcile
that? Not really. I just didn't give a damn. I don't know. It wasn't important to me, I guess. So I mean, and then I was thinking about this. I haven't been to the temple since 1999, but I was active and I would get a temple recommend just to, do certain callings and shit. But I just didn't care too much about it.
But you were in a small branch, or a branch which is small just by its very nature. But I got from your essay that it's a fairly liberal-minded branch. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I could say I just don't think people care out here. Not like, certainly not like they do back in Cache Valley. And branch president knew. He didn't care. I mean, I should say he didn't care. He just, you do it discreetly, and I need help. Quit for a month or two so you can get your temple recommend, and we go back to work. Man, it wasn't a big deal to him, I guess.
But he was aware that you were drinking?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, sure.
You said in your essay, that it was unnecessary for you and your family to have to leave the church, kind of how you did. You said it kind of decimated the branch, and you said that was so unnecessary. I wonder kind of what you meant by that it was unnecessary.
Well, so Janet and I, we had decided long ago that we were going to get our kids through high school before we even talked about church. And what we were going to do. So I'd been drinking beer for 10 years. I'm an elders quorum president, branch president. As long as I do my job and calling, it's not a big deal to him. So we would have just went our merry way. It wasn't, and church was maybe more a cultural thing than anything. I mean, it wasn't a big deal to us. We put everything on the shelf.
So what was it that at this point you're not a firm believer? What is it that kind of led you towards that path?
Yeah, for not being a believer.
Yeah.
So, I'm unorthodox. Got that. I don't like the culture of the church, the corporation. The white shirts. Those kind of things bother me. And Prop 8, the City Creek Mall, that kind of shit piling up. And so then I go and I join Stay LDS because actually Mormon Think guys told me to go to Stay LDS, which I give them a little bit of credit. And October conference about 2010, that's when they did the 2 lines of communication and the 14 fundamentals of profit. That kind of set me over the edge, I guess, with church when I started hearing that kind of crap. And that's when I started getting a little bit more vocal. And I started, kind of bouncing stuff off of family members. I was good at church. I never said shit at church. Just did the job, taught the classes. But, I started talking to family, and that's kind of where I got in trouble.
Well, so where was your wife? How did your wife respond in your progression or in your evolution, as it were?
I think that she was faithful, I guess. I'm not sure I'd call her a TBM, but certainly faithful, and all her family's, devout Mormon, so she didn't want to rock the boat either.
But are they local, or is her family local or closer to you, or are they also farther away?
They live in southern Eureka. They live down in Utah, like central Utah somewhere.
Well, I did want to talk about this idea of just the word of wisdom generally, and the way it's become such a sacred cow in the Mormon Church. And your essay points to that and highlights that a little bit. And it's something that I find maddening, quite frankly, is to deal with that particular issue. It's like, fine, don't believe, don't go to church, but you're drinking too? That's the response we got anyway, or my family got. What do you, both of you, I guess, what do either of you attribute that to?
Jesse, you want to?
What do you attribute? What do you mean?
The reaction about or the focus on the word of wisdom as being the pinnacle kind of, I guess.
Oh, I think it's. I mean, Chad can answer for what his experience was, but I've seen the same thing. I've experienced the same thing, and I think it's total border keeping. I mean, it's like once you do that, you're just completely stepping outside of the practice, the norms of what people do. So it's, instead of just kind of being a theoretical exercise in what you believe, you're actually changing, to them, a major lifestyle element. And so yeah, I think that's pretty much what it is. Plus, there's so much negative stereotyping of anything having to do with alcohol that it just you have one drink and you're an alcoholic all of a sudden. There's no such thing as a healthy healthy drinking of alcohol.
You know what I think it is? I think it's all about outward show. I mean, I think that's what they're trying to do with it. We gotta be an outward. You gotta look good on the outside, and I think that's what it's just a damn marker to identify faithful Mormons and the unfaithful Mormons.
Yeah, I definitely think that's part of it. The the outward identifier. So they're in group, they're out of group. But a buddy of mine, I'm stealing this from a friend. I thought this was kind of interesting. He said, adultery or some of the other sins, I guess, if you want to characterize them as that. Everybody can understand why you'd slip up or why you'd want to do that, but the alcohol thing is such an intentional act. Nobody slips into it.
Yeah. So if you guys, I don't know when the last time you taught primary or whatever, but I remember teaching primary and asking kids to list sins, like the worst sins. Hey, drinking alcohol is right up there with adultery.
Right.
A lot of times they'll put it ahead of adultery.
Which is actually, I think, back to your point, Matt, it's pretty ridiculous when you look at least when you contrast it with what was taught in early Mormonism. You look at D&C 89, and the word of wisdom that we have now is completely the scripture turned on its head. It's literally the opposite in many instances of what was supposedly revealed, is what people consider to be the word of wisdom now. The way that people eat, what it actually says in there about how it's not a commandment. If there's one section of scripture that you can point to and say the church does not follow this, it's in terms of how it was revealed. This is a pretty good example.
Yeah, and I laughed when you said it's healthier. Beer is healthier than Mormonism, because for me, I don't eat as many sweets now that I drink.
Yeah.
My cholesterol's down. My heart, actually, the test that I've done, the baselines that I've done, is I have real severe family history, and I'm almost 40 years old. I've got my dad and grandfather both had heart attacks in their early to mid 40s, and my numbers are better now. 3 years, or well, I guess it's been longer than that. Well, 6 years since I've been drinking than even back when I was younger, which I think is crazy.
Yeah, I'm the same way. My liver is doing well. It gets a workout occasionally, but it's still doing pretty damn good. So.
You also said something about beer saved your marriage. Can you talk about that?
Sure. Well, there's no question that I'm pretty uptight. I'm an asshole on occasion, no question, and I'm a pretty good drunk, to be honest. And I drink a beer, and I'm just a much more mellow dude. And one thing we found out is have a beer or two, and you can really talk, as a couple, in a marriage, and that's something we were not able to do until I started to, until I drink beer.
You could have stumbled onto a whole new form of couples therapy. Let's market this.
Yeah, well, it works for us. So
now let me just raise my glass and say here, because
what are you drinking tonight? I can hear your bottle chinking.
Oh
there.
Yeah, well that's just water actually. I got my ice and water here, but I really need to pull one before we end this.
Matt only rarely comes onto the podcast drunk. It's Randy who's constantly just sloshed.
Oh my gosh! The funny thing is the one episode where I needed to be completely clear is the one they just impromptu call me up. It was the Manacles. What is it? The
Manacled Mormon.
Manacled Mormon. They call me up, and I don't know how many I'm in, but I was out at a conference and it was late, and I'm in a different, I'm in the East Coast, so it's even later for me, and man, I'm just slurring in that. But I'm going to talk about my taste here in a little bit, because that's one thing I want to push on you about a little bit is what I drink and what you drink, and get into the nitty gritty about beer. But before we get to the fun stuff, get the whole church thing. I got to tell you one thing I loved I've never heard before is you saying that the Jonah's whale might have been an ancient alien submarine. I'm going to start stealing that, dude. Where'd you get that from?
It's just as possible as getting swallowed by a fish, isn't it? It's just logical to me.
Well, it is logical.
Probably more likely.
Yes, it is more likely. But I'm surprised more Mormons don't embrace that, because the whole other world thing and all this interaction. Because I'll tell you the story, and I don't know if I've shared this on a podcast before, but it's my favorite story of my brother who's in the bishopric of his ward, and he was able to explain to me why the blacks were only able to get the blacks. I don't think you're supposed to use that term. Why black people got the priesthood in 78, why it took so long. And he explained to me how Cain killed Abel, and that's what prevented him from being able, or his seed, obviously the black people, were prevented them from getting the priesthood. So he had to wait until Abel's posterity got the priesthood. Well, how would that happen, you ask? Because Abel's dead, right? This is my question to him. And this is PhD level math, math scholar, okay? And he explains to me how, well, Abel's posterity somehow went to another planet and therein got the priesthood right around 1977.
Well, obviously.
That's the answer to it all. So Alien Submarine Boy, that's just as good as anything.
Yeah, there's a lot of messed up stuff, I'll tell you.
And when you start to think about it just for 2 seconds, some of this stuff really starts breaking down. And it seemed like that was the case. That was the case for you.
Yeah, well, and I want to be clear. So I think there's a lot of messed up stuff in the church, but I would not have left the church if they had not pushed me out. So
yeah, so I was unclear about that, and that was another question I had. As I have written down here that it was when your family really kind of instigated it. So what I'm trying to understand is what role your family played versus these cool branch presidents and stake presidents that you would think would have more influence.
Yeah, well, my family is very, very involved in the church, and I do have a stake president brother in Cache Valley. So all my problems probably go back to John DeLynn, because that's kind of where they freaked out, is when they found out I was in John DeLynn's Mormon Stories group out here.
Now, who's they? Is it your family, or is it leaders,
family.
or both?
Family. Just family. Because, like I say, so I got a stake president brother, and I have, bishop brothers and high councilman brothers. And so somewhere along the line that, back in 2010, 2011, that's when, John DeLynn was really in the hot seat. And when they found that I was involved with Stay LDS and John DeLynn, that's kind of when they started making the phone calls.
Yeah, I was surprised by that, what you said about with being involved with Stay LDS. I mean, I would think that would just be an obvious signal to somebody else that, hey, this guy's struggling and he's trying to stay in the church. I mean, it's an organization that's dedicated to helping people, find reasons to stay in the church when they might otherwise not want to. And yet they just, I've seen the same thing, though. You tell people what, like we have a local support group here, and it's the same kind of, I've had people react the exact same way. They just kind of, anything that's in any way critical or at least acknowledges problems with the church, they're just going to brand it, immediately that it's anti-Mormon and there can be nothing good of it.
Yeah, no question. I think that they were scared of John DeLynn a lot back then, and so they even indicated to me that my brother had no choice. That was that he was required to let my leaders know that I was involved in that. So I think it came from higher than stake president. In fact, so when I got called to the stake president, I know that John DeLynn got called in. Brian Johnson, who runs Stay LDS, got called into his stake president. And they did the same thing. They went through the first 4 temple recommend questions and just grilled the hell out of us. And, John said that, and Brian Johnson said the same type of thing. So it was kind of it wasn't just a local deal. I think it was coming from higher than just my brother stake president.
So explain the interaction there between your brother or your family instigating it and the reaction of your local leaders that got to the point where there was some sort of action taken.
Yeah, and so I know the branch president was very surprised, and he was sick by the whole thing. I mean, he's been a great guy. At the stake level, once you get accused of being an apostate and being a sheep in wolf clothing, especially when you're dealing with DeLynn back in 2010, where I think he was scary to the church, and I think that they pretty well they overreacted, no question about it. And so the stake president pretty well gave the orders after he found out I was doing the Mormon Stories group, and I also had some friends back in Cache Valley who my brother was dealing with in church court. Obviously, I said that in the essay too, and that was dealing with Mormon Stories and John DeLynn's groups as well. And so my stake president gave the orders to the branch president to grill me on the temple recommend questions, to revoke the temple recommend, release me of all my callings. A lot of talk of church discipline and church, church council, and that's kind of when I said, this is enough for me. I'm not going to do this anymore.
And so this happens right around May of 2011?
Yep. April. May's the last time that's when I consider myself having walked away from the church, was Mother's Day. That was kind of my last meeting with the branch president.
Yeah, but you wouldn't be resigning. That was giving them the easy way out. I wonder if you could explain that a little bit, kind of what your thoughts are behind that.
Well, I think they would love for me to resign, to be honest, and I'm not going to do it.
Just makes it easy for them. Is that what you mean?
Yeah. So I listened to your mini episode last night, and I don't know if you guys listened to Johns Larson. He did a podcast on Uchtdorf's conference talk.
Yeah, I listened to it.
And, yep.
Yeah, he's right on. So Uchtdorf gives this pseudo invitation to come back to church. Really? Does the church want us back? No. Do they really want us to come back?
No, not in the way I am, and not in the way I was.
No. And I even asked my brothers, "Do you guys want me back? Am I really welcome back?" Yeah, we want you back. We just don't want you to speak from the pulpit or teach class or to say anything that's
right.
that doesn't go that goes against the church.
They want
they don't really.
You want you to revert back to where you were, like mission age, basically.
Right. So I'm not gonna. So fine, if they want me back, fine, invite me back and let me come back. But I'm not going to make it easy for them by just resigning. That's just my personal view of it.
Yeah, my wife has a very similar view as you. She very much likes that they have to count us as inactive and as all the things that kind of count negatively, I guess, against them. Which is kind of funny if you know my wife. She's so not that way. She's just not vindictive like that. That would be more my move. Whereas me, I tend to agree with you, and I vacillate back and forth sometimes. But the reason I won't resign is because, at this point anyway, and that could change, but right now it's because it acknowledges that they somehow have some power, authority, or say-so over me. And me not resigning, or me resigning, taking those steps, is jumping through their hoops.
Yeah,
so that's
absolutely.
where my mindset is right now, which I understand the argument against it, but that's just where I'm at.
Yeah. Well, I'm kind of that. Yeah. So when I walked out Mother's Day 2011, I was going to church court, and I just said, I don't give a shit. You can hold a church court if you want. I'm not going to be there. I don't care.
So they actually got to the point that they had formal proceedings against you?
Not formal. It was all just rhetoric and talk. They were. I called their bluff, is what I did. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think they were bluffing the whole time.
They were telling you, yeah, we're going to go this, or this is the next step, and this is possible, or this is going to happen.
Yep.
Huh. But then nothing just came of it.
It sounds like they just didn't go through with it. You stopped attending, and then, I mean, maybe did you just kind of fade away as far as they were concerned?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they're bluffing. They thought. I think they thought I would just come back and everything would be okay, and it didn't happen.
Man, so elders quorum, Sunday school president, an instructor, primary president, a primary teacher, and the assistant scoutmaster. Now, obviously, you and your wife were both just carrying a heavy load in a small, probably barely functioning branch, is what I took from that.
Yeah, pretty well. There was 20 to 40 people in any given week, and and most of them pretty well had no clue what was going on.
So, but given your status in the ward and the relationships you must have had, what was the impact on the ward or your friends in the ward?
Well, I think they were all shocked because they didn't know any of this. I mean, they were pretty well clueless, other than the branch president. So I think they were shocked. The branch is pretty well evaporated in the last 2-3 years. I mean, it's just there's not much there anymore. So it's I don't know. I'm still friends with them. I mean, I still say hi, and I went to church in August. They were nice. So
Just August this year, this summer.
Yeah.
What caused you to do that?
Just for shits and giggles, I had to go back, see what's going on.
I attended twice this year. Once was for my nephew's farewell, so I attended pretty much the whole meeting, and then one was for my niece's. My niece had a baby who was blessed, which I didn't stand in the circle. No one could stand in the circle that wasn't basically a father or a grandfather. There's this new policy on that apparently, but otherwise I would have. But what I was struck with is how much torture it is to sit through a Mormon service now after having not done it for years.
Yeah, and that's probably just sacrament meeting. You have to go the whole 3 hours to do that.
Right, and all my kids and my wife all just keep leaning over and saying, "Can you imagine doing this every week?" No, I actually can't. So it's nice to, I guess, jump in every once in a while and remind yourself what you're not missing, I guess. Sometimes someone posted today on Facebook is I thought about going to church, and instead I had my wife kick me in my balls, and I remembered what it was like.
Hey Matt, I got a question for you. We're supposed to record last night, so I listened to your podcast instead and drank beer, and I got a question on your mini episode.
Yeah.
I think I want to maybe you can edit this out if it's not
sure.
But you talked about you decide that you're not beyond Mormonism. So is it actually ethical for people like us to not talk about this stuff? So we see all this damage and hurt that it's doing. Ethical for us to walk away and just not be part of it anymore?
Yeah, I saw an article on that, the ethics of remaining silent. And for me, what I definitely think I have a right to talk about whatever I want to because of that very thing, because I see it as damaging, and my family's involved, and so many people are involved to such a degree that it not only did touch me, but it continues to touch me and affect me and my kids, and so yeah, I have a right to talk about it, and I should. What I was hoping, I guess what I meant by that is just that I would really get to the point of apathy, kind of what you were talking about, hoping to get to, where I really don't care anymore, and it just doesn't matter. And I just think I'm, at least right now, I'll never get to that point. But yeah, I mean, if the ethics part of it, I think it's an interesting philosophical discussion. I will always talk to people about the things that are damaging and the aspects that are damaging, particularly to kids, and I actually do that formally to a degree, and professionally. But yeah, I don't know about if you don't feel it though. I don't see anyone has an obligation to talk about it. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I think it's a fine line. So I don't know. Do you do more damage talking about it? And no one wants to go through faith crisis. I mean, all of us, for God's sake, we know how bad it is. So do you talk about it and send people into that, or do you just let them believe in their merry way and go about their lives? I don't know. I think it's a fine line, and so I don't have an answer for it.
Well, I'm convinced there's nothing that we can say that will actually impact other people, that we can't have influence on other people. I'll steal another John Larson podcast where he talked about bumping into a light switch, that at some point this stuff could be out there and they could be aware of it, and you could have been the one that provides it to them, but until they bump into their own light switch to turn on the lights, it won't matter.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about your brother. I was going to say something really pejorative, but I won't, because he's your brother. Your brother and Nathan. I mean, tell me about that and how that went down.
Well, so I'm not sure how much of that story I should tell. I just the same time I'm going through this, he is, he's in court getting disfellowshipped, and it wasn't all about apostasy. Actually, he went to confess his sins to his bishop, and it went all the way to the stake president, and so he was kind of more involved with that rather than apostasy necessarily.
So he had different issues than maybe were perceived for you.
Sure.
But so have you talked to your brother at all about his reaction to your buddy?
Almost none at all. I've had almost no communication in the last 3 years with family. So no, I have not.
Well, so you're a little detached from your family after all this. Is that what I get?
Oh, yeah.
What I get from that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, very, very little communication. I mean, it's yeah. And I mean, I love them to death and great people, and but I think that it feels like a cult right now to me, because they pretty well cut me out, and I'm sure they're going to not see it that way, but that's the way I see it.
Yeah, well, I hate to keep making this about me. I'm having similar things with my family where we don't associate to the same level as we did before. And for me, it's just we don't have anything in common anymore. And so, I mean, we can talk about football, college football, and other things like that, but those conversations can only last for so long, and we don't have the same things in common. And to hear the conversations that focus around church so much, I just don't want to be a part of it. As a result, I think I pulled back from my family rather than them pulling back. But it is associated with the church and the things that we don't have in common as a result of it.
Yeah, well, and there were so many things said that were hurtful, and there was a lot of things that should not have been said when all this stuff happened. So one thing is, I mean, my family flat out asked me if I was gay because I was so vocal about Prop 8. They could not understand why I would say the things I said.
You know what's funny, Chad? I was at a get together this past weekend, and one of my good friends told the exact same story, that he came out to his parents about his unbelief, and listed the church treatment of gays, and Prop 8 was a big deal for him. And his dad, maybe still now to this day, is convinced that he's gay. And this is a guy with very heterosexual, married kids. He's not gay, but his family's just kind of thinks that that's really the issue. Which is just mind-boggling. I mean,
yeah, that's funny. So answer the question: are you gay, Chad?
No.
Oh, okay.
Well, how gay are you, though?
Right.
I mean,
and I don't think I'm very gay.
Let's talk about beer.
Yeah, let's.
Okay.
So, you started your brewery when?
I started my brewery, about the summer of 2011.
Did you, obviously you were always into beer before. Were you a foodie? Were you a wine guy? I mean, have you always liked flavors and tastes and cooking and that sort of thing? I mean, most of the people that I know that have been home brewers, they at least have some kind of interest in stuff like that, whether it's barbecue or something. Was that the case for you, or was this kind of your first foray into food making?
No, I've always been interested in, like I say, as soon as I got to Oregon, I got interested in beer. I mean, Oregon is beer. It's the beer state, no question. Yeah. I mean, it's not, so you get to Oregon, I'm thinking beer is, Budweiser, Coors, basically that's just pretty well horse piss. You get to Oregon and all of a sudden you realize there really is good beer. And so once you get out, and I think the craft brewing is really spread now, but back in the 90s, it was kind of a Northwest California type of thing, just starting out. And there's, it's awesome. I teach food science, I'm an ag teacher, so I teach food science, and I send kids to Oregon State and they become brewers. I mean, that's a actual major that I'm sending kids to do now.
Yeah. Arizona's another one. They've got a lot of fantastic local breweries, and you really kind of can really appreciate some of the nuances that go on with that. But see, I'm not much of I am a beer guy, and I drink beer, but I'm more of a cocktail guy. See, I took mine to the spirits route and really found that.
Well, that's against the word of wisdom.
That's right.
Yeah, right.
You're breaking the word of wisdom. I'm not.
You're not. That's right.
Yeah, here I've got the quote right here. It says that barley for all useful animals and for mild drinks, as also other grain. Right?
Yeah.
So even your rye and bitter orange peel.
Now, Chad, tell me, did you think about that at all before you left the church? Were you kind of justifying your beer drinking because of that passage?
Sure.
Actually, really?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I just knew it was. I just knew it wasn't gospel. It's kind of like wearing a white shirt. To me, beer is like wearing a white shirt. It's just it's. I don't get it. It makes no sense at all. And it's just one of these man-made commandments. That's how I looked at it.
Gotcha.
And I explain to people when you talk about just beer, if you stick with beer, the likelihood of if you're a 180 plus pound man, the odds of you being over an 08 to be intoxicated while you're driving is really rare. It's really hard to do.
Yep.
Because of the amount of liquid and everything, and I've been involved with these workshops where they ply you with alcohol, and they don't let you drive afterwards otherwise. But it's for training, so officers can do their field sobriety tests and do the eye test that they do, and it's pretty great because they bring this real high end hooch stuff that they've gotten from they've collected from criminals and drug dealers and different things, and these biker gangs who buy the good stuff. So, but we have these every time there's a guy, we challenge one of the biggest guys to say, let's see if we can get you over an 08 with just beer. And
good luck.
Yeah, they start pounding, and I mean pounding pitcher after pitcher after pitcher, and they're all at a .04. So it's I think it's instructive. The beer is one of the safest things you can do.
Yeah, well, and if you're drinking real beer and not horse piss, it's hard. You don't pound real beer. You can't do that. It's thicker. It is a little higher alcohol content, and it's hoppier. So you can't just go pound. What was the one the kilt that you drink?
Kilt lifter.
Yeah. So you can't pound that. That's too damn hoppy and too thick.
Yeah.
Can you imagine trying to guzzle that?
Yeah, that's a 6%, I think.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, that's good for you can nurse that for a half hour, no problem. I mean, that's
Hey, so you guys want to talk about beer?
Yeah.
I prepared a quiz for you. If you want to go through this quiz, I want to see what you guys know about beer.
All
kind
right.
of in the style of caustic soda.
Whew.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
I'm gonna fail.
Let's
go ahead.
Let's go. Bring it on.
Okay. Finish this quote. Beer is proof that
God
exists.
loves man.
God loves man. And who said it?
That would be Friar John.
They actually give Ben Franklin credit, though.
Oh, okay. I was quoting.
Yes.
Okay, maybe it was Ben Franklin. I was thinking I was quoting Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves there.
Okay, here we go. Beer makes you feel
horny.
Wicked.
Beer makes you feel the way you ought to feel without beer.
I like that.
Yeah, Henry Lawson. Okay, now for the tough questions. We have evidence that beer was produced how long ago? Scientific evidence.
Oh, like Egyptians.
I'm gonna say like 4,000 years ago.
We go back to 5,000 BC in Iran. First place they found beer. The Egyptians, I think, was like 3,900 BC.
All right, that was close.
Okay, yeah, close.
Wait, hold on a second. 5,000 BC, that didn't even exist. That was before Adam.
That's a good point.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Science is wrong on that.
Yeah,
your science is wrong, bro.
That must have been the beer that was organized from other worlds.
Geez, now that hoser's growling. Yeah. Take off, please. Don't wreck our show, you hoser.
Anyone for the closing prayer? Say, Jane, have you discovered that better beer? I've found out that Bavarian's Old Style, a man's beer, is my beer, too.
It's true. Women have discovered the superb satisfaction in every mild, mellow drop of
Infants on Thrones.
It satisfies.
It's Bavarian's beer for you.
Thank you for listening to Infants on Thrones.